As defined by the Canadian Mental Health Association, homelessness is a diverse continuum of living arrangements, such as living outside or in places not fit for human habitation, staying in temporary or emergency accommodations, living in accommodations without security of tenure, and living at risk of homelessness due to the lack of financial security or other factors that may be compromising housing. When was the last time that you've seen someone that is homeless? Maybe it was yesterday or last week, or even sometime this month. Either way, we've all seen the effects of homelessness, as it's become a normal part of society. But should it be? This begs the question, why is homelessness such a prominent issue in our society? This topic will prove to have relevance to the topics psychology and sociology, as we explore the causes and effects of homelessness, and some stereotypes and misconceptions about homelessness. My hypothesis is that homelessness is created by the lack of support for those in poverty, as well as the lack of empathy from those in our society. There are government organizations that are created to help those who are not financially stable, but the amount of people that are homeless in the country today shows that those organizations are not as effective as they should be. The lack of empathy in people on the topic of homelessness is created through stereotypes and is also created from acts of conformity within society. I gathered my research from different high-quality sources, such as books and websites. I also collected data through a survey where I asked a series of questions on homelessness to both male and female students from grade 6 to 4th year university. From this survey, I discovered a lot about how people perceive homeless people in our society and how much they know on the topic of homelessness. The majority of the respondents from the first question were from grade 11. The majority of respondents from the second question were female. And from the third question, when seeing a person that is homeless, which of the following are you most likely to do? 41.9% of people said that they would ignore them, while 53.5% of people said they would give them money or food. From the next question, do you believe that there are stereotypes and biases surrounding homelessness? 86% of people said yes, while 11.6% said maybe, and 2.3% of people said no. From the next question, do you think that all people that are homeless have mental illnesses? 83.7% of people said no, 9.3% of people said maybe, 4.7% of people said I don't know, and 2.3% of people said yes. From the next question, do you think that there's a sufficient amount of government organizations to help those that are homeless or in extreme poverty? 67.4% of people said no, 11.6% of people said maybe, 14% said I don't know, and 7% said yes. Would you be more inclined to give money to a person that is homeless if they were? 86% of people said it wouldn't matter, and 14% of people said female. Nobody said male. Would you be more inclined to give money to a person that is homeless if they were? 44.2% of people said it wouldn't matter, 46.5% of people said a child or teen, and 9.3% said an elderly. Do you believe homelessness is a prominent issue in today's society? 74.4% of people said yes, 11.6% of people said no, 4.7% of people said maybe, and 9.3% of people said I don't know. What do you think contributes most to the percentage of homelessness in our society? 66.7% of people said all of the above contribute equally, and 16.7% of people said drug abuse. Would you be surprised or shocked to see a person that is homeless in your city or community? 72.1% of people said no, 14% of people said yes, 11.6% of people said maybe. Do you think that you are helping a person that is homeless by giving them money? 32.6% of people said no, 32.6% of people said I don't know, and 34.9% of people said yes. From the question, when seeing a person that is homeless, which of the following are you most likely to do? We can see that a lot of people are under the impression that giving money to homeless people is not beneficial or is not their responsibility, as 40% of people chose that response. This relates to the psychological phenomenon called the bystander effect, in which a person may not feel obligated to help a victim in an emergency situation when there are other people around. This takes place because there is a distribution of responsibility. Someone may not feel obligated to give money or food to a homeless person because they are thinking that someone else will do it instead. You may be thinking, but a homeless person isn't in an emergency situation. But the reason why you may be thinking that is because homelessness is such a normalized part of society, when in reality, someone living outside with no food or shelter is in fact an emergency situation. Though 40% of people may not be the majority of people, it is still a large amount of people that would turn the other cheek to a person that is homeless. The results from the question, do you think that there's a sufficient amount of government organization to help those that are homeless or in extreme poverty, shows that the majority of people do not think that the homeless have enough available resources to help their situation. A sociological theory called the strain theory, developed by Robert Merton, states that society puts pressure on individuals to achieve socially accepted goals, though they lack the means, and that leads to strain, which may cause the individuals to commit crimes. The amount of people living on the streets today shows that there's evidently not enough financial support from the government to help those experiencing homelessness in our society. And so according to Merton's strain theory, this can cause the homeless to commit crimes. According to an article written in The Guardian, 1/5 of all homeless people have committed crime to get off the streets. Once having committed a crime, getting a secure and stable job may become a difficult task, so the person may find themselves homeless again after committing the crime, and the cycle will just continue. This can greatly contribute to the amount of homelessness seen in our society. In another survey question, 70% of respondents said that they would not be surprised to see a homeless person in their city or community. This again shows how normalized homelessness has become in our society. The North American society that we live in is a capitalist society, which forces the population to be divided into two categories: those who have capital and those who do not. Karl Marx's conflict theory can be used to explain capitalism as a cause for homelessness, as the homeless are like the workers who are exploited by the owners, who are like the government and the rich. Marx's theory explains how our capitalist society creates different social classes, in which the rich have all the power and control. Common questions about homelessness are, why don't the homeless just go to shelters or get jobs? Or why don't they just get help? But the answer to these questions are not as simple as they may seem. Some reasons why a person that is homeless may not go to a shelter are because they may be denied entry because of a mental illness, discriminated against because they are part of the LGBTQ community. They may be fearful of assault or rape, afraid of being separated from family members. They feel that there's a lack of control, and also because of a lack of available beds. This makes getting off the streets a very difficult task for someone that is homeless. A common misconception within our society about the homeless is that they are all lazy, but according to the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness, 20% of the homeless in Toronto are employed. So for the 20% of them that are actually employed, their homelessness could come from the fact that wages are low and housing prices are forever rising. This goes back to the idea that our society always pushes for people to be successful but doesn't necessarily have the means for everyone to get there. Homeless people are often grouped together in social categories within the society. From a sociological viewpoint, this would mean that they interact with each other on a daily basis, share beliefs and values, and also have a similar identity, which is not the case. A quote from the book All Our Sisters, Stories of Homeless Women in Canada, says, "Doreen didn't look like a person you might think to find in one of Canada's tougher, larger homeless shelters. She was friendly, neat, and clean. She didn't use bad language, was never drunk, noisy, or violent. She helped out with chores and always had a smile." This quote shows that not all homeless people fit in the typical stereotype of homeless. The homeless are actually an aggregate and not a group. So as a society, it is important that all homeless people are not generalized to one specific stereotype or bias. From this research, I've learned that homelessness covers a broader spectrum of living circumstances than when I had first thought. Someone can be homeless even if they are not necessarily living on the streets. Couch surfing is even considered a state of homelessness. I've also learned that there are various causes and effects of homelessness. Some causes revealed in my research are the bystander effect, in which there is a distribution of responsibility, the strain of society explained by Merton's strain theory, as well as capitalism and the lack of government support explained by Marx's conflict theory. I've also discovered that there are many misconceptions and stereotypes surrounding homelessness. Some of the frequent ones are that all homeless people are unemployed and lazy, and that all homeless people can be grouped together to have a generalized identity, even though they are in fact an aggregate and not a group. To conclude, homelessness is a prominent issue in our society as most of us witness it regularly. Through my research, I've discovered that the root of the problem bridges from other psychological and sociological issues found in our society, and the people within it. Social class, power, and pride come before morals and values, as society asks for more than it can offer, and the societal epidemic of homelessness continues to strive.